And welcome to Weekly Manga Recaps Month in Review, November 2025. That's right, it's WMR squared with me, Nick. Just me. But if you want more Weekly Manga Recap in its usual format, be sure to listen to the Wednesday streams on twitch.tv/RoloT, which are also being posted on YouTube and Spotify and iTunes and all those kind of places. This is meant to be just a supplementary kind of coverage of the series that we usually talk about on that weekly show, plus a few other series that we don't normally talk about on there. So if you want us to get into like more detail on it, if you like, hearing like humorous banter and everything like that, that is the main show is going to be for that. This is going to be me talking to myself about kind of just my general thoughts about where the manga that we usually cover are at right now, in a way that I think that we kind of don't really have the opportunity to go over in the midst of the weekly show because we're so concerned with just kind of covering the chapter and we don't know what to expect from the next one. We're always trying to like leave our minds open, and there's not quite as much room for like, taking things in the context of how we feel about like recent chapters as a whole. It's like, oh, here was my reaction to this one chapter. And then if we get into like all the nitty gritty of like, here's how I feel about things like in detail in terms of how this fits into it, then we get bogged down, and we cover too many series to really be able to do that all the time. So we're going to cover everything that has normally been covered on Weekly Manga Recap, which is going to include series that have ended this month and also series that we started to read but then dropped because there was a new batch of manga, of course, that started at the beginning of October in Shonen Jump. We have not kept on reading any of those, but I did read all the chapters that came out in November for them. So I guess let's just get into it. We are going to just kind of go from the oldest series into the newest ones, and we'll see how that goes with us. So, of course, that means that we're going to talk about One Piece first. So, in the flashback that we had here in One Piece, which had in November chapters 1064 through 67, Davy Blood, Reverberations, New Stories, and Ida's Sons. The God Valley incident, we got through all of that. Riverside Zebek fought with Roger and Garp, who managed to subdue him. Zebek survived the battle, but then St. Garling and Maffey and Sommers, I don't remember these guys' names. I had to look them up while writing my notes. Killed him while he was still weak in battle. And because of everything that happened in God Valley, it is like this big historic, history-changing incident that takes place within the One Piece world, where a lot of things that become relevant in the present setting of the story were set off into motion from this. So, for example, like Shanks as a baby wound up with Roger's crew, Dragon quit the Marines, and then finally we get back into like allegedly what this flashback was about, which is about the Giants, with Loki mourning Zebek's death, Harland also reacting to his friend dying by deciding, all right, no more half measures here. He decides to accept Loki fully as his son, and then rips out his horns and offers to become a slave for the world government because he wants the Giants to be accepted among humankind, and he is willing to do what they tell him to. He'll rampage around, he'll destroy ships and all this stuff in order to get the Giants accepted into society. We've gotten some details here and there that are interesting in the context of just the Elbaf arc. So, for example, the stuff with Shamrock is relevant here, but I do still feel like this wide spanning flashback has been a problem because it's kind of diluted what it feels like we should have been focusing on. This has been like 15 chapters we've been in this flashback, and a full 7 of them were in the God Valley incident. And a lot of the stuff happening in God Valley was not directly relevant to the stuff that's going on in Elbaf. There are some things that were, like, the stuff that had, like, the reverse eye technique, that's relevant. Like I said, stuff with Shamrock and Shanks, that's relevant. Seeing, like, some of the generals in the past versus how they are now. Okay, you can see some of the point in showing that. But it does feel as though we sacrificed, like, stuff being set up for the current arc that we're in, and making that hit harder by stretching out and going, okay, we got to set things up for things that are going to happen down the road. I referred to it, I think, in the weekly show as, like, this is very MCU storytelling, where it was like, okay, we got to make sure that, all this stuff, like, interconnects and sets up all these things that we want to do in the future at the cost of something that is supposed to be interesting and entertaining right now. That's always a very difficult balance to strike if you have a long and wide spanning series or work of any kind of fiction like this, where it's like, yeah, it is very important that you plant the seeds if you want to pay them off later, but you also want to make sure that you're paying off the thing that you're doing right now. And I think that if this was supposed to be a story about Herald and Elbaf and Loki, then it's lost the plot. And I'm not a fan of that. We are now, as we get back to stuff with the Giants, getting to stuff that features Herald and Loki directly, and hopefully things will turn around a bit from there. But I mean, like, all the stuff that happened now, where the big turn is like, oh my gosh, Ida's going to die. We just spent 7 chapters never bringing her up. And it doesn't feel like that's going to be a huge tragic loss, because instead of spending a lot of time getting to know her and getting to see a lot of the impact that she had on Herald and Loki, we instead saw, like, I don't know, right, who was the thing? All the stuff with, like, Teach and his mother and everything like that. It's like they had nothing to do with anything that was going on. It's going to be important later, but it just has nothing to do with stuff that's going on right now. How long have we been waiting for, like, Robin and Nami and Chopper and everyone to just, like, get untied in the present setting of the story? Ugh. But going on from One Piece, we had Chainsaw Man, chapters 219 through 221, The Bereft, Bonds and Michigan, and Safe Battle. There was also a chapter that came out this Tuesday, but I mean, I'm not going to, like, avoid talking about that, but it wasn't a November chapter, so there you go. Really insane month for Chainsaw Man. We started it with Pochita eating Lil D, which means that the very concept of death currently does not exist in the universe. Not only does nobody die, but, like, nobody understands that it's weird that nobody dies. It kind of took until, like, the most recent chapter for Yoru to even realize that, like, oh wait, this is going to be an unending battle at all. There's been Chainsaw Man getting shot up with guns from the tank and gun hands. There's been Michigan and Oregon turning into swords. Yoru turned the people of Oregon into, like, a spirit bomb punch. And through it all, she can't die. Chainsaw Man can't die. And Yoru doesn't understand why, really. We did have this whole thing with, like, Denji growing conscious, growing conscious in the Chainsaw Man form in the most recent chapter that was, again, not in November. But it seems as though the approach is going to be, all right, well, Chainsaw Man can't die, and Denji is too insane for Yoru to handle. So she's going to eventually give up on trying to blow stuff up. I wonder if it's going to be that straightforward or not, but it's been a really fun month with Chainsaw Man, with all this insane stuff happening, just throwing everything at the board, pulling no punches, and I think that it's been a bit of a drudge to get to this point, but it's nice now. And I am at least curious to see where things go. I feel as though we can't really go any further here without reaching the climax of this arc. Like, this has to be, if not the very end of this part of the story, then getting really close to it. And I mean, oh, Ravi likes it though, so I guess that's the most important. So yeah, Chainsaw Man's been crazy. I'm glad it has been crazy though. I think that we were really getting sour on the series up until this fight between Yoru and Denji, or Yoru and Pochita, started happening, and this is kind of like more Chainsaw Man's bread and butter, the kind that's fun to eat at least. Well, the other bread and butter is making Denji miserable, but it hasn't been as interesting this time as when it's happened before with him. But on a completely different track, we had Spy Family this month, which had chapters 124, 125, with Mr. Henderson having been accused of accepting bribes and providing test answers to some Eden student's parent, and someone posted flyers featuring what was supposedly photographic evidence of the bribe taking place. Henderson elected to resign from the academy to avoid any further controversy falling on the school, but Anya read another teacher's mind who apparently is responsible for some kind of frame job happening. And it turns out that the abandoned hall that she had explored previously is where their base of operations basically is. So she went to try and stop the bad guys with Becky, Damien, Emilian Ewan, Connie, George, and Will to see what's going on. We had a series of some of the teachers who are apparently all involved in this conspiracy, stopping some of the kids at different points. But we eventually wind up with, at the end of the most recent chapter, Anya, Becky, and Damien on the 4th floor of the schoolhouse, and there is this ghostly figure that is floating above them. So it's been a fun Scooby-Doo adventure thus far. I do like that we had the exploration of the abandoned schoolhouse before there was this criminal plot happening. So it's, again, very much like a Scooby-Doo plot, is where the spooky stuff happens, and then in the midst of it, you discover that there is a very mundane, real-world act of greed and corruption that it's all a cover for in some way before the meddling kids solve things. And it does seem as though we're going to get like Anya earning a Stella from this. Like, I mean, come on, if you save a teacher's career, then that's got to count for something, right? But I have to wonder, this was just an idle thought, and I don't actually really believe strongly in this. I do have to wonder if there isn't something more to this conspiracy, because I don't really see what the benefit is to the teachers to have Henderson framed for this. It would make more sense in my mind if only one of the teachers was responsible for spreading the misinformation. But then what do all the other teachers get from it? Like, if one person in the staff is kicked out, then that leaves room for somebody else to rise up and to get like their higher salary or their position on whatever council or whatever, their influence, in short. But several teachers, especially ones that are like unrelated, like like the gym teacher is one of the ones that's involved in it. Like, what are they trying to get out of this? Unless they're the actual ones that have been getting bribes in some way, and they're just having Henderson take the fall for it. So it made me think at a certain point, like, is this like some sort of like test for the students? Like, is this all staged in some way? Which, again, I don't really adhere to that idea. It was just a thought that occurred to me, like, what if this was actually like a test for the students, a test of their character to see what they would do? But I think that there's too many factors involved in terms of believing that the kids would take the initiative at so many different points. Like, especially considering that they are 6-year-olds. Obviously, Eden Academy is supposed to have very exceptional individuals, but I think it's more likely in the kind of series the Spy Family is that it's just a legit thing that Anya did just like happen to be in the right place at the right time for and happened to discover it herself. But it was just the thought that occurred to me. All right. Then we've got a series that we don't normally cover on the podcast, which is the Elusive Samurai. This is a series that seemingly is approaching its end slowly but surely. It seemed to get a little bit faster going in that direction this month, though. There were chapters 225 through 229 this month. Extended Battle and Nanbokucho Invincibility and Parting Ways 1352. Succession 1317. Children 1353. So Tokiyuki slew the demon within Ashikaga at the end of last month. Ashikaga, however, survived for reinforcements to arrive. Tokiyuki and the Hojo armies were forced to retreat. So Kojiro, I hate this so much. Kojiro made one final attack on Ashikaga, basically as a form of courting Sheena, whom he wanted to understand that killing is a husband's job. Kojiro survived the attack, made it back safely, so he and Sheena got married. Tokiyuki said farewells to some of their allies, and he and his retainers went into hiding, and then we get a flashback to explain how Ashikaga had become possessed by the demonic force that drove him, then emerge from that flashback in a small time skip to 1353 from 1352. So in the intervening time, Ashikaga, he's become more diligent, he's more serious, he looks more his age now, he's no longer divinely blessed, and also he doesn't have his trusted allies to like do all the minutiae for him anymore, so he is handling a lot more of like running the armies and the government and stuff in their place. So after stabilizing the region, turns out that he's got to take care of things with Tokiyuki. That's where we're headed is for their final confrontation. And in the Hojo camp, we got babies. Shizuku, Ayako, Mima, they've all had a son with Tokiyuki. Kojiro and Sheena have had a son. They're all acting stupid. They are all behaving so dumb. I really did not like everything that had to do with marriage and kids in these chapters. It has nothing to do with like the fact that it's like, oh, you shouldn't like have like this kind of happy ending. It's like there is something about the way that this was executed that felt incredibly gender role-y. The way that Kojiro talks about Sheena, how she needs to get off the battlefield and just leave that to her man, very not cool. I don't have a problem with the idea of marriage and parenting being portrayed as like an ideal life or as like, you know, a thing that like kind of gives people a sense of bliss and satisfaction. But if you talk about it in a way where it feels like this is the only way to be happy, that's where I start to have a problem. And that is the vibe that I was getting while reading specifically that exchange. And then on top of that, the way that people act when we're in that, and all the elusive warriors, are married and have kids now. Kojiro and Tokiyuki act like such dumbasses when they're like using their kids to fight with each other. And Shizuku, Ayako, and Mima are so bland and generic now. Like they're just wives and moms now. They don't in any way feel like distinct characters. They feel like they're just women who have done their job. And they even talk about like, we are the wives of warriors and we will have our role to play in the coming conflict. It's like, some of you actually were warriors, period, before this. And that's just so gross to me that it feels as though in this act of like achieving like an ideal life, they have been stripped of their identity as distinct characters. I did not like that. And I understand that this is, of course, commenting on like, oh, it's old Japan and stuff, and so things were this way. It doesn't feel like we're talking about them in terms of like, oh, things just were this way. It feels more like we're talking about them like, weren't things great back in the old days? This sequence of the girls, like, just like deciding like, oh, it's great being a mom and a wife and nothing else. I have literally named that as like my nightmare scenario for Blue Samurai, the Netflix series. Like, if someone said like, oh, what's a way that like, the series could end that you would be pissed off at? It's like, if Mizu decided that like she didn't want to have revenge and she just wanted to be a housewife or somebody and just give up any sense of being a warrior or whatever. It would be so contrary to all the messaging of the series and who she is as a character, and would really, really, really annoy me. And that is exactly what happened in this series. Did not like it. In terms of the slightly bigger picture, it seems like we are going towards Tokiyuki being fucking dead at the end of this series. That is historically what happened. He eventually was caught by, the Ashikaga and was killed. And now we're using terms like, Tokiyuki left behind a whole bunch of kids. And so it seems like he's gonna fucking die at the end of this. All right. Okay. You guys did this, all right? I asked what you wanted me to talk about. Someone said Witch Watch, so I read Witch Watch again. I shouldn't have done it. Look, I don't like this series, okay? I think that this series was designed in a lab to annoy me. So it was chapters 224 through 227. I only really fully paid attention to the first one because it annoyed me so much, because it was a very bizarre shift in tone from like chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter in this month. The first one was The Scent of Romance, wherein immediately Morihito does the thing that I hate, which is he just confessed to fucking what's her name, Nico, that he loves her. And then, of course, because it was, the magic butterfly thing, the spell that made him do it, he's like, I wasn't planning to do that. And so Nico's like, I want to actually hear what you were going to say before that happened, what you were legitimately planning to say. And Morihito says, like, well, I don't take back what I did say. And I do, like, when I confess my feelings to you, it did feel good to do that. But then he says, I don't think it's a good idea if we start dating right now, because your life is in danger. We have more important things to do. I have a question. Is it impossible for shonen authors to just nut up and have a confession stick? I hate when this happens, where they're like, oh, well, we got the moment where the confession happened. Now they're going to pretend like it didn't happen, because I'm not confident in my ability to write two people in a happy relationship. Yes, Eerie Gray, Blue Box, it's the exception that proves that you can do it. And I don't know why more people don't. Why does it require this to happen? Like Kenta Matsuhara, is that his name? Has been making manga for so long. Just don't do this last second hookup bullshit. The entire series is about the relationship between these two characters. Don't pretend for them to like progress and then not. And like, admittedly, like, even towards the end of this chapter where that happens, there is a bit of like mitigating it, because there's a joke about how Nico like is aware that she's not in a relationship officially with Morihito yet, but she can't stop like dropping like Instagram hints like they are already dating. And that is, while not a joke that I find funny, one that I see the value in terms of like, yes, they had this dramatic conversation and they agreed to do this, but it's not really sticking for her. And they have a moment at the end where they are acting a little bit differently towards each other because they hold hands. And then we get into the series doing a very big dramatic and now here the bad guys are chapter, followed by 2 chapters of them making fun of that idea. And I, again, understand the value in it in theory, but it really did not connect for me. There's a whole chapter that involves like this big dramatic reveal where a guy whose name I don't know sets a puppet on fire while talking about witches and uses the stream that he's on to spread a curse to a whole ton of people. And then that is when all the warlocks arrive in order to start causing stuff. One of them blows up a fucking building. And then the next, like, after she blows the building, within the same chapter, everyone's like, man, these guys are weird looking, aren't they? And Morihito literally goes, why aren't you guys taking this seriously? And it's all a big joke about how he is, like, taking it seriously and they're not. And I don't vibe with the series. And that's okay. All right? I just can't. I'm not going to bother to try anymore. And as it is, I shouldn't be reading this. We're 225 chapters deep into this series that I have adamantly refused to read for 217. So, all right. Sorry, let me silence my phone so that doesn't happen anymore. Okay, there we go. Okay. Out of that. Dandadan. We had chapters 216 through 218 in the month of November. Look, we're being attacked by space aliens. The Ogre Club. And he's a mummy, isn't he? So we had Momo and Okarun fending off an attack by a herd of Serpos and an alien that was possessing the body of a mummy. The mummy was called Mr. Driss. He rode a bicycle, swung a katana, and he made the road under everyone's feet vanish into a void, except for the white street riding on it. And like his bandage, he wrapped it around the wheel so that he wouldn't fall. It was all very weird. But one of those kind of like senses of weird that is like you still instantly know what's going on because it's like there's enough time dedicated to it that you pick it up. So Okarun was able to use the Ogre Club, but had a lot of difficulty maintaining the energy that was emanating from it. It was most effective when Momo channeled her chi through him. Momo also used the police whistle that had been given to her, which summoned One-Eyed Wilma, whose name we still don't know. One-Eyed Wilma begrudgingly helped out Okarun and Momo by taking out the Serpos, and then that left just Mr. Driss for Okarun and Momo. Okarun was able to hurt Mr. Driss, but he got stabbed in the shoulder, and then finally by working together, Okarun and Momo grabbed his bandages and just unwrapped the mummy, which caused his body to decay and fall apart. We got confirmation in the chapter this week that is actually the climax of the battle. We'll talk about the aftermath of that in full next time. But I gotta say, like, it was a very fun, hectic battle that had some new elements to get intrigued by and wonder, like, okay, is this just going to be like the dynamic going forward? Because obviously, Momo still doesn't have her psychic powers. Okarun no longer has the Turbo Granny powers. So is this like getting us used to kind of their new power sets? What is that going to mean going forward? The fact that Momo can just draw out more of the ability of the Ogre Club, but only Okarun can wield it. And there was just some like inventive stuff that was used in it. There was a lot of interesting stuff with, them not having footing because of the void and having to work around that. They couldn't even really run anywhere because of it. And I really liked the goofy way that it was, things were concluded. It reminded me a lot of the luring the giant crab into a hot springs thing in the early part of the series, where this very mundane kind of joke explanation for how they're going to win the day is just how they do it, and yet it's still satisfying when it happens. So a good month for Dandadan. And it was nice to just have a very tight combat that, is like, oh yeah, you start the month and like with the combat beginning, and then you end the month with it being over. It's good stuff. Okay. Then we have, oh dear. Did I not save an image for Blue Box? Oh, that sucks. All right, we'll fix that here. All right, so then we had Blue Box. We had chapters 218, 19, 20, and 21. A Place of Memories. I've got someone on my side. I'm going to Nationals, and I'll see you when you're done. So the beginning of this month, we had Hina helping Taiki to, like acknowledge that like bad stuff is going on with him mentally. We let go of some of his stress that he's been pushing down by, relating to him. This story of her father, whom when she was a little kid, she just kind of saw him as just being this superhuman athlete, but then she saw him getting emotional during a family outing one day. And that allows her to see, like, yeah, Taiki, people see you as superhuman now, but, you're allowed to, like, have these negative feelings and stuff. Just treat them as, like, weights and weight training and stuff. And that did have an impact, but unfortunately, Hina botched the landing because she just got caught up in the moment, gave him a kiss on the cheek, tried to take it back for a second, but then decided that wasn't going to work. Let him know, like, I've still got feelings for you. And then she ran away, and we haven't really seen them interact since then. So good job, Hina. But fortunately, Taiki had the sense to go to Chinatsu, who encouraged him that he needed to praise himself more. And Taiki finally did have a big emotional breakthrough. He realized that he's been setting himself up for failure because he admittedly lacks confidence in this period in his high school badminton career. So he's just kind of been trying to, like, negate the feeling of disappointment he's going to have if he does eventually lose this. And by admitting that and realizing that he's got someone really, really passionate and who believes in him on his side, he had this big emotional breakthrough. Chinatsu and Taiki, after that, spent the night together, and then Taiki's mom came home, having been released from the hospital. So, in short, right before the regional qualifier, Taiki finally has his full support system in place. And we got to see the beginnings of the tournament, which included Taiki's parents and Kyo's family and Chinatsu all showing up to support their boys. And Ayame made cute personalized cookie, a little Kyo cookie just for Kyo. It was very cute. And we're now right before Taiki and Kyo's big match. And Saki has just shown up. Uh-oh. And obviously this is the first time that we've really seen Saki since she, kissed Kyo while he was unconscious, which ended up causing Ayami to decide, like, oh, he doesn't have feelings for me because she thought it was a mutual kiss. And then she ended up dating someone else. And now we've just gotten out of that. So this is a chance maybe for Ayame and Saki to interact, and maybe that'll clear up the misunderstanding between Ayame and Kyo finally. Which does also have parallels to something that has just happened with Taiki. So it's interesting where, we have cases of, like, the guy in the relationship or lack of a relationship with Kyo and Ayame has been kissed by somebody else. Of course, the difference is that Chinatsu doesn't know about it, and Ayame does. But Kyo has been very, like, non-confrontational about everything. He has not, tried to go out of his way to say to Ayame, oh, that was all a misunderstanding. So it feels like it's going to come down to Saki and Ayame may have to have that confrontation, well, that conversation, hopefully, in order to get over that hurdle. It'll be interesting to see how that resolves. I'm really looking forward to it. And I can't believe that Saki had just been away for so long. I forgot really that, like, she was a character. I just kind of remembered her as the cause of that turmoil because that's really been her role in the story. Occasionally Blue Box does have that problem where a character is kind of so limited to the one role that they have to fill in the plot that they don't feel like a full character. And with Saki, it definitely feels like that, where it's just like she's just the obstacle, And I don't know, for someone who's, like, very important to Kyo's family, it doesn't really feel like that's fair to her. And I wonder if maybe after we get past this, Saki having, feelings for Kyo stretch of her story arc, maybe we'll get to see more sides of her personality and how she might fit in with the cast. Not necessarily as, like, a character who's, like, going to, like, show up very often, but more like kind of a Yumika character where she has that very important role in one of the characters' lives and can be someone that they can just interact with in a way that they can't interact with anyone else. But we'll see, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's was nice to see especially the topic of Taiki, like, his struggles being tackled in the way that they were. I very much related to that with, the idea of like, kind of like pulling yourself down so that you don't feel bad if something, if you don't achieve something. I think that a lot of people can relate to that, of like mitigating their expectations so much that they are actually negatively affecting themselves because they're so afraid of letting themselves and people around them down. And yeah, it was a good month of everything, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where things go, because it's not, I mean, not just the relationship stuff. I didn't even bring up the fact that like Kyo and Taiki are having a badminton match now, and that there's going to be a lot of dramatic stuff involved in that, and that's going to be really good. Okay, we have Akane-banashi. Oh, that's what happened. Hang on. Okay, good. It starts to be good from here. Okay, hang on. I'm a professional. Akane-banashi. There we go. All right. We had stories 181 through 185, Zwiyun effect, reward, card and time, drawing capability, and coldness. So obviously the big event this month was the fact that Akane met with Isho, who, in his own way, congratulated her on winning the Zwiyun prize and on completing the challenge that he had given her, and he promised to perform one favor for her as a reward, one that she can name at a later time. But Akane was also assigned, along with Kaisei, to organize the annual Isho Kai, a massive event that is just for Rakugoka from the Arakawa school. And so from there, we got more into exploring the dynamic between Isho and Kaisei, with Isho seemingly having done something that caused Kaisei to fail his Shinichi promotion exam. And that is definitely like the big dramatic hook of where we're at right now, is like, Kaisei experienced something that clearly had a really bad effect on him, and sees Isho as like, no, he's just a demon, which a lot of Akane's experiences with Isho recently have been like, God, I hate that guy, but he really does, like, there's value I can get from him. Kaisei is kind of like further along on that, or maybe had like went down a different path in terms of like the assignment that he was given, where like it didn't work out for him, and so he's like, man, this guy's just an asshole. So obviously that's like the big dramatic thing in terms of like, we're going to get more sides of Isho as the antagonist, basically, of this series. But also there was a lot of talk about drawing power and income and how those are important for Rakugoka in terms of their career, because we had all this information about, Akane's like broke right now. She's crashing at her friend's place because her mom has moved out of town because, she wants to travel with Shinta while he's doing work stuff. And Akane's not drawing very well. Despite the fact that, she's a Futatsume who, has all this experience. She's got this very big accomplishment with the Zwiyun prize, but she's been away for the last several years in Europe, not growing an audience. And so we just had this big thing where Shomei said that, like, oh, here is like, my judgment on you in terms of like where you are at in terms of ability. And he said that Akane was very far along. But in terms of everyone else, Akane is like lagging behind in terms of drawing power. And those are, like two different ways of measuring the success of an artist. And it's nice to see that just presented very bluntly of like, look, like if you're a performer like that, then, the amount of fans that you have are a measurement of your level of success. And Akane does not have that right now. So changing focus from like, oh, she had this very big internal accomplishment to like, hey, she doesn't have a lot of external accomplishments. Very good, and it'll be interesting to see how that gets handled going forward. But it was good stuff, and God, I love Isho so much. I love him as this very hateable but fascinating villain. I feel like when you look at his show, like, you want to know more about him, and then the more you learn about him, in a way you realize there's not that much to know, because he's so very consistent in terms of how he sees things. It's just that because he is so adamant in what he believes and what he practices and how that seems so unfeasible and not good for like anyone else to do. That's what they struggle with. But I love seeing anyone interact with him. All right. Going on to Marriagetoxin. We had chapters 145 through 147. Gero got a power boost from ingesting pure poison, courtesy of Toshiro Dogo, who became a full-on Sunsun this month. So he and Gero are now working together because Toshiro wants to save his maid, Byako, whom Quinn and I completely and utterly forgot about. I didn't realize how long ago that arc was. That was like in the in the 30s and stuff like that. That's how long ago Arashiyama was introduced. And I just had completely forgotten about like everything that happens in that arc. I was lucky to even remember who Toshiro was when we came across this. But yeah, Byako seems to be like the big thing that is going to kind of be like, you know, the morality leash for Toshiro in terms of like keeping him on the side of angels, making him a more sympathetic character. Don't really know all the details in terms of like why that is yet, but it'll be interesting. And very, very big thing this month was that we found out that Arashiyama had hired Ushio to give her a ride to the sanctuary because she wanted to help out Gero, which means that those two are involved in this arc, and that's great. It seemed kind of like at the very beginning that this was going to be like, oh, Gero's just like isolated from everyone, and that is very quickly proven not to be the case. A lot of people have shown up at the sanctuary that it didn't seem like it was initially going to be the case originally. But that's fine. It's just, you know, the series going in a different direction than I was expecting. That's fine. And Ushio is I just love seeing Ushio show up. Ushio is one of my favorite characters in the series. She is never going to end up with Gero, but I'll root for her anyway. It's okay. I really do want to see like where a lot of the threads that have shown up in this in terms of character interactions are going to go. That stuff is like way more intriguing to me than like, oh man, how are they going to get out of this prison or whatever? It's like, well, I mean, they'll fight some dudes. That's kind of it. Obviously, Tonoko has been set up as a very intimidating final boss in this stretch. But again, like who she is as a character is much more intriguing to me than what she can do in terms of her prowess. There was that whole thing where like Toshiro had the big freak out when Gero first suggested that they try and escape together because he's so intimidated by Tonoko. But I don't really care about that. I care more about like what this woman's got going on in terms of like, you know, I want that dude to give me babies. Like that's her plan. And it's interesting in terms of like we're getting increasingly like the playing into the harem aspect of the series is like increasingly being portrayed as like an antagonistic force, because of course we had Sensei saying like, oh, the harem ending is what I want, and Gero's like, well, I want to do that. And now we've got Tonoko saying, well, I also want to be one of the love interests and I want you to give me babies, and Gero's like, well, I don't want to do that. It's just kind of an interesting way of utilizing the tropes of romantic comedies of this nature in a shonen battle series. It's like, in a sense, it's like the way that fan service is utilized in Kill la Kill as a plot element of a battle series. It's fun to see it be played around with like that. Okay. And we have new Exorcist, which is just totally fine with doing all that stuff straight. We had chapters 121 through 124 this month. North High's second goddess, cheer battle, Soranaki versus North High, power identified. All right. So we had this whole introduction to Kagura, who is the unpowered second goddess of North High. And then she's like done nothing in the plot in the last several chapters. She shows up like in the background in some shots, and I think she was at least involved in the first two chapters, but she hasn't done anything since Soranaki showed up at all. So, I mean, is she at all relevant to this arc, or was she just like a thing to pad out the first couple of chapters before the actual like force that Gakura had to worry about showed up? We had like a chapter and a half of essentially meaningless sports festival stuff, including some of the most confusing scorekeeping that I have ever seen. Even in fiction, it was really confusing. Then Soranaki showed up. He grabbed Nue's boob. They've just started doing contests that actually matter now. And Gasha, don't go breaking my heart. He did this ball rolling contest with Shitotsu, which ended up with her losing her bikini top. But that's okay, because Gasha Drywall covered her up with an exploding rubber ball. And Soranaki has electricity power. That was the big reveal that we had in the most recent chapter. I am used to being new sexist rather, just being inconsistent. But it has felt like not only has every chapter been very unpredictable from the previous one, it feels like it's like an additional step and a half removed from the previous one. Like if you were to take a wild guess on where something is going to go from one chapter to the next, you would not only miss it, you would then have to, from the place that you land on, take another wild guess to land anywhere in the vicinity of the thing that actually happens. It's really like been keeping me off balance, and would be incredibly frustrating if I liked this series. But because I don't, and in fact because I enjoy not liking it, that it's fine. Like I like just being able to get that kind of reaction of like, what the hell is going on, and to keep things spinning like that. I don't know what is going to happen next, and that is fine. I will keep on reading this series until it is over. Sorry. Reading stuff, talking by yourself is very difficult. We have Boruto, chapter 28, which was, new powers. Yeah, because Boruto got his new sword from Sumire. That was fast as fuck. Kashin Koji had a conversation with Inojin about how he utilizes his powers. It was dumb. Shikamaru reached out to like 15 fucking characters with this special new jutsu that Inojin has in order to coordinate a plan for them to defend against Mamushi's clones attacking. Why are so many characters part of this group? Why is Chocho involved in this group? She had nothing to do with anything going on. It really feels like the series is, at this point, not willing to put the work in, if you know what I mean. People just get new powers just because. It doesn't feel like there's any sense of accomplishment in them gaining those new powers. Kashikoji just tells them how to get the powers and then they fucking have them. Why are these people like involved in the plan when we've gotten no time to connect to them as characters? Like, I mean, at least Inojin got a little bit of focus in the last couple of chapters, but like we've got nothing from Chocho. And Shikadai's only like actual involvement in this was being around when other characters were doing stuff when the invasion of Jura stuff happened, and then like calling out his dad for like being a big ass traitor in this chapter right before he's like, anyway, come into my team, son. It's like, why do we supposed to care about any of these characters if it's just like you're just throwing them into these situations without actually feeling like you're going on a journey along with them or getting to know them before anything bad happens to them? Remember when Yodo died really dramatically after she had one conversation with Sarada? Barely even had time to learn her fucking name. And I can't believe I did learn her name, come to think of it. I certainly didn't learn her teammate's name, the other guy that was part of Team Shinki. It's just like, yeah, she was just there to like provide like, a parallel to like a girl being in love with a guy that's more important to her. And then she just gets offed after that because it's supposed to be, sad and stuff. But it's not sad because like you didn't get to learn anything about her or get attached to her or care about anything she did. And it feels like that is the case with so many characters in this. This is a series at this point that feels like things just happen. like you go chapter to chapter and things just happen instead of there being like a consideration of like how it affects the people within the world that it's actually about. So yeah, Boruto bad. What else is new? All right. Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. We had chapters 67 through 71, The Great Race to Retake the Demon Lord's Castle, The Great Demon Lord Beelzebub, Eve of the Showdown. Kiyoshi in the Demon Realm is like a moth to a flame, and one Kiyoshi against 1,000. So we got to meet Beelzebub in this. He, unlike his kids, is a pretty chill dude. Turns out that Bub and Shishido are secretly really good pals, and Bub wants to help them all stop his children so as to protect the innocent demons in Astaroth's realm. We had some nice character interactions before the big battle happened, and then our team started getting split up. Shishido squaring off against Helzalulu. Kiyoshi was able to subdue a whole bunch of demons, but he ran out of time on his exorcism crests and had to be bailed out unexpectedly by Mr. Yamada's wife, who's so now he's reunited with Mr. Yamada, who's carrying him around while he's half unconscious and trying to get him to safety. Shit. I think that was a really good idea to run this arc after the Black Parade. Because we had a whole ton of chapters of like, look at all these monster demons just attacking, and all they want to do is kill humans and stuff. And not only was it nice to have like a change back to a more humorous and lighter tone, but also to reestablish that like, look, not all the demons are bad guys. Makes the world more complex in that way. So we've had, like, of course, Mr. Yamada reintroduced. We've had Beelzebub being revealed to be, an ally willing to even kill his own kids in order to protect the innocent. Even the reintroduction of Hydraco in this has helped to recontextualize things and make you see things as a more three-dimensional world in Kiyoshi with the Demon Realm. And obviously, the initial framing of the arc was that, well, Shishido is one of the cross-paladins. He could cast the deciding vote that would let Kiyoshi rise to that position. And I do wonder how that's going to play out, because like the obvious conclusion is like, okay, well, Kiyoshi goes on this adventure with Shishido. Shishido grows her liking for him, sees what he can accomplish and all the good that he can do, and he would be the one who's to say like, yeah, you should be a cross paladin. You've got all the makings of one. But I do wonder if this development of Kiyoshi not having his powers fully back yet and getting put into a position where he had to be bailed out because he was not conservative enough with preserving his power, if Shishido might look at that and say like, well, maybe you're not ready yet. Maybe he like sees the potential in him, but decides, well, like you didn't like make all the best judgments in all of this. Because this is not the only time that's happened while they've been in the Demon Realm. They had that confrontation with those guys in the street, and Kiyoshi got himself involved in a way that he shouldn't have. He got discovered through his disguise because he stood out in that way. And all of it's been played for laughs and stuff like that. But it might be an interesting twist in the series to just have that, like, not yet, Kiyoshi. You're not ready for that yet. Especially because like this is still like early on in this kind of story. We're only just 70 chapters in. I think him rising to that level would be a little bit odd. It wouldn't be necessarily like a bad decision, considering that Kiyoshi is the ultimate exorcist. But it might be interesting to see that, and to, maybe Kiyoshi would have to like turn somebody else back in his favor on the council in order to do that. Okay, and we also had Hima-Ten, chapters number 65 through number 69. Friends on the Eve, Christmas with the House Cleaner, Opportunity Maker Kana, Celebration Kana, and Kanten. So Iomori and Himari had their Christmas party together. Himari had a lot of mixed thoughts during it because she felt guilty about the fact that she was kind of exploiting the guy that she liked to do favors for her because he works for her. But she came away from it deciding that she needed to actually start competing for Iomori's affections from now on. And similarly, Kana and Iomori went on a date and then had dinner to celebrate Kana getting her first cover shoot. And in the most recent chapter, Kana gave Iomori a kiss on the cheek and told him straight up that she liked him. So, look, Quinn and I have been talking about how I was like, man, there's a whole lot of just like putting Kana's boobs out there and stuff, and it seems like that's all she really gets to do. But I will say that the overall impact of these Christmas chapters, as like it feels like it's made a difference. Because we've had Iomori decide that he needs to tell Honoka that he works for Himari. Himari has decided that she needs to stop being passive with her feelings for Iomori, and Kana she just went for it. She confessed her feelings to him straight up. So it's been a very eventful little arc in these past like half a dozen chapters, and I do hope that at this point, like, there's follow through on them. That it's not just like, oh man, stuff's happening, and then it's like, well, and then it just goes back to the status quo. This feels like a lot of status quo changes and shakeups are happening all together. And I do really want to see like those take effect, because it's not like all they're going to be really huge. It's not like anyone has like started dating or anything like that. But Iomori's relations with all of the main love interests in the story can now change in some way that would be interesting to see unfold. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm optimistic that it will have lasting effect going forward in different ways for all of them. But I feel like I'm most skeptical. That was an interesting one. Most skeptical about the Kana one. In terms of if anything's really going to become of it, not just because of Kana's position in the story, but because it's the most extreme. As in, like, it's not just, someone finds out that Iomori works for Himari, and it's not just Himari is going to supposedly, like, start to try to make more steps to get Iomori to notice her. Those can be very intangible in their impact. Iomori knowing that Kana likes him romantically is kind of the thing that, like, it feels like it needs to have some sort of an impact on, like, almost every interaction that they have, which is why I feel like it's the one that the series is going to shy away from the most. We'll see. I'm optimistic, but we'll see. And we had Ichi the Witch, 57th through 61st hunts, Love and Hate, Nurture the Future, Shifting Futures, In Between, and Vitals. Started the month with Uroro killing Kizashi a whole bunch before Ichi got back control of his body, which left him passed out, like usual. And then Sammy, the prophecy magic, she saw a vision of Minerva being killed and decided that she had to help Team Descaros in their battle with the Octobomb magic. But Hitsuki ended up showing up to assist Kizashi in the attack on the Chrono Weaver ship. Fortunately, though, with Sammy's help, they were able to see that this was going to happen, and they planned accordingly. And after that, we have gotten fighting. Kizashi is racing off to kill Minerva with a staff that Hitsuki had provided him with, and Descaros is dealing directly with Hitsuki, who is trying to use some sort of underhanded methods to keep her at bay. And unlike the previous arc, which dealt, like, all the stuff with the previous arc was, man, this is one asshole, nefarious magic, very manipulative. This one has focused on the idea of cooperation and coexistence between magics and humans in several different ways. Obviously, there's, Chrono and Minerva. There has been stuff with Sammy and Jikishirane. There has been the fact that Ichi and Uroro were able to willingly make a contract between them. There is the idea that Kizashi doesn't directly hate people. He just sees anyone who dies in his vicinity as being too weak to be his friend, but he actually wants to make friends. So there's a whole lot of different elements here that make it seem like there could be like some alliances made here. Like if Ichi, for example, were to acquire Kizashi might interpret that as being like, oh, he is strong enough to keep up with me, and so maybe he'll consider him his friend or something like that. I also wonder if we've touched on the idea of the trials of magics that hate humans the most are the most difficult, and I wonder what that means for Chrono's acquisition trial. If there might be some sort of way where, like, maybe someone could acquire him very easily, and maybe that would be like a way to like protect Minerva or something like that. It might be a sacrifice he'd be willing to make by having someone acquire him in order to use his ability to save her, for example. There's just a lot of like ideas in terms of that are being set up that I do really appreciate. that help make this arc stand out from the previous one. Okay. Starting to lose steams, but let's keep it going. Otter of the Flame, we had chapters 25 through 29. Erder the Evergreen, Soul Grafting, Philgia's Memories, Otter's Memories, and Warrior of Wind. So this month, Otter and company endeared themselves to the elves, which include Erder the Evergreen, who is partnered with Jormungandr, the Wood Spirit. I don't know why it's not just Yggdrasil, but whatever. Erder conducted a ritual to allow Otter to converse with Philgia, who has been dormant since the battle with Doa Doa. However, while Otter was in a trance, Calerio the Spirit Horn attacked, using Ran the Water Spirit to possess Jormungandr and disable Erder. Otter and Philgia were able to understand each other better, quote unquote, and they have achieved a stable demigod form before rushing into the battle at the end of the most recent chapter. Look, there's been a lot of action in the last 5 chapters, and that's all been fine. But what's been really disappointing is that there are 2 entire chapters dedicated to the idea of Philgia and Otter understanding each other better, and neither of them really seemed to want to do that at all. There's a chapter here titled Philgia's Memories, where we spend 1/2 of 1 page on Philgia's memories. With the one on Otter's memories is really just kind of like a story about a stool, and that's it. We did not spend much time on exploring the 2 characters' memories and backstory at all. Whenever you have this kind of thing where 2 characters are in turmoil and then they gain insight into each other through this sort of mind-walking thing, the idea is basically that it's not just characters needing to learn what the audience already knows. It's also that the audience is supposed to learn something more about them, and we really did not do that. So it's frustrating because I just don't think that Kawagachi has the chops to do writing compelling character drama, and that is very frustrating. It puts a very hard ceiling on my ability to enjoy Otter, because I value characters more than any other facet when telling a story, when doing a manga series, when a TV show. If you don't have interesting characters that get explored in interesting ways, then it feels to me well, what's the point of even having a story at all then? This feels like it's just kind of going through the motions in order to set up all the different action beats instead. And to do, have fun character designs in the middle of combat and everything. So it's frustrating to me. And I read Harukaze Mound. This has been a weird month for Harukaze Mound, because you can see a very clear shift from, building things up, to the series is ending. It very clearly is at the point where it's this is not going to last now. It's almost comedic if it weren't so sad, that's the case. Anytime that a sports series is wow, we're going up against our primary rival in the second round of the tournament. So, all right, well, I guess here we are now. And it's very weird because the second of these chapters, which was Superstistic Coach, introduced Coach Midori, who is this very concerning character who kind of gets turned on by young athletes. Not like that, but she gets turned on by athletic tropes, if that makes sense. It's weird. And we just introduced this coach character for the team, and now we're amping up to well, we got it. Their first official game was in chapter 23, and it did not last the whole chapter. There is no sense of a momentousness to it. It is sped through in order to make sure that there is as much time as possible in the short time that is left for them to beat their rivals. And yeah, I did not understand how doomed the series was until I actually read these chapters. Here we are. It seems to be the thing that happens with every sports manga in Shonen Jump recently, which is just that it ends early. It just doesn't seem to catch on. And if this is not a sign that the series is ending soon, then I'll be very shocked. Speaking of sports series that ended very soon, a series that was much more fond of was, of course, Ping-Pong Peril. which did have its last chapter this month. There's not a whole lot to talk about because it is just a single chapter, and we did get a lot of our final thoughts on the series when it did end at the beginning of November. I thought it was good. I thought it was fun, but unfortunately, I do acknowledge that, yeah, like this was a series that was never going to last. It's a bit too weird, and the artwork I don't think is strong enough to support how weird it is. If this had been a series with great art, I think it could have done a lot of really dumb, fun ideas, and gotten people into its weird premise in the same way that, like, I'm talking about like Shokugeki no Soma had insanely good art. If there had been art on that kind of par, people would have turned from like this series is dumb to this series is dumb, man, and would have liked it. So yeah, I think it's a shame because like I had fun with it, but yeah, like it just doesn't look good enough for the kind of series it was. Then we had, oh god, I am so done. Jeez, we had Someone Hertz, chapters 8 through 12, Friend, Bad Kid, I Don't Remember, Let's Swap, and Sense of Connection. This was the third month of publication for Someone Hertz, and it feels like we got a bit more of the ship train this month than we did before. We had Mime getting like a bit more conscious of the closeness that he has with Mizuo, being more self-conscious of it, in particular, being mistaken for a couple and stuff. We got them connecting really sincerely during their tutoring session together, at which point they exchanged pens, and it was very cute. And it feels like Someone Hertz has gotten into its groove at this point. And given that the series is doing well, I do kind of wonder what it's like if the series is ever going to even need to really shake things up, and what it will look like if it does. Because there's a very comfortable point that it is at. I don't know if it's ever going to really need to deviate from it. But yeah, it's good in terms of like it gives very cozy vibes, and I think that that's just kind of like what people generally like about it right now. Again, I don't really connect with a lot of the jokes in it, but I admire the feel that they give off in terms of how they reflect, especially on Mizuo as a character, in terms of how like she's always on, she's always like going off on these weird non sequiturs and stuff like that. Even if you're not laughing at everything, it makes you more comfortable with the characters, and I think that that's tantamount to the series' success. Okay, then we had Gonron Egg, chapters 2 through 6. I complained about Otra the Flame a little bit ago, not feeling like it has good character writing. At least it has character writing. At least an attempt is made, Every single time that Gonron and Oma have met a Dracarch in this, they're just like a generically evil monster guy. Every single time that they've come across a human, they're just there. They're like the guy that Gonron has to save, and that's just kind of it. The most interesting character that we met was someone who stood up because she actually helped to kill the Dracarch that Oma and Gonron were fighting, and she gave Gonron a little kiss. So she like actually did something that was different from anyone else. I could not tell you a single unique character trait about her specifically, though. She was a girl whose mother was in trouble. That was just kind of it. So it feels like there's just like statues in this series. They're just kind of like being moved around so that the action beats can happen. And that's not great. I've really bounced off of this series as it has become more obvious, like, oh, the characters are not going to get deeper than this. They are literally just that bare bones at this time. And I mean, maybe that'll change, but at this point, I'm not going to bother to try and stick around. I did read all 6 of the chapters in preparation to talk about this. That is my full impression of all 6 chapters. And when, when we're this deep into it, it's like it kind of feels like if the series is not caught with people already at this point, then it's just not going to last anyway. So I'm not going to bother to try checking it out anymore to see if it does get better. Yeah. And then we had The Mage Next Door. All 5 chapters of the series came out this month. We had Asoagawa the Mage, Asoagawa vs. Ice, Yoboko the Mage, Elite Magic Task Force, and Asoagawa vs. the Shopping District. And something that stood out to me, especially in the last 3 chapters of this 5 chapter run, is that Soiga was just like really sincere about wanting to help people. He wants to help Yobiko be more confident. He wants to, help a museum get back something when a mage steals it. He and Yobiko kind of like mistake this themed cafe, which is like, oh, we're a magical cafe, with witches and stuff. They think that like, oh, there's magic users here and stuff, and they totally buy that until they realize it like towards the end of the chapter. But at the end of that, it's revealed that like, oh, the cafe's really struggling financially. And Soegawa is like, well, I mean, I really like the pancakes that he made. And so he's like, I want to become like a regular customer here. I want to like order from you and stuff and help you out. And he patches up their uniforms with magic and everything. He just does it because he just wants to help out. There are no mages involved that they have to capture or anything. He just does it because, he wants to help out people. And there's something very cozy feeling about that. That I do really like. I don't think the series is particularly exciting or particularly funny, but it does feel like these are just kind of like nice, and it's nice to have a series that just kind of like presents like heroes just doing good things because they're good people, and sometimes it's just like not a huge thing for them to do it, and I like that. I like how, again, like cozy feeling this is. I don't know if I'll check out more of the series, but I am definitely, of the series that came out in this batch, the most open to trying it out again. Like if it turns out, like we get to like a year from now or whatever, and it's like, oh, like Mage Next Door is doing pretty well. It's like, well, I'll consider like going back to it at least. I can't say the same for Hero Girl and Demon Lord Call It Quits. Look, I don't actually have anything against this series. I just do not connect to its sense of humor. 4 chapters of this came out this month. The Hero and Demon Lord, Hero Girl and Demon Lord get serious. The 2 previous generations stop by, and the Hero versus Subspace. Anytime there's a lot of jokes in this series, and anytime that I even find one even slightly funny, I start to get my hopes up a little bit. Like, because I've never actually laughed at any of the jokes, but I've been like, oh, that's funny, and like. In comedies, jokes build on each other. Comedies like this, jokes build on each other. So if like it gets into a run, it's like, okay, one joke can set you up to find the next one funnier and stuff, and that has never happened for me. I'll find one that I kind of like in a vacuum a little bit, and then the next one is just not good, and it's like, all right, all the momentum just doesn't build for me. There was one that happened in the most recent chapter where like the subspace that the Demon Lord summons sometimes in order to pocket dimension stuff into. Asuka gets into a dispute with it, and they have a contest, and so the first leg of the contest is like a scavenger hunt, and so the Demon Lord's like, find me a street sign. So the subspace is like, okay, well, I'll teleport over to the street and I'll grab a street sign. And so he's like, there's no way I can lose this. He grabs it and comes back, and Asuka's already there, and she's got a street sign. And the subspace is like, how'd you get that so quickly? And Asuka says, I had the Demon Lord make it for me, and then she found it that way. And we're like, that's funny. I didn't even go I just went, that's funny. And then the next joke after that, I was like, no, that's not funny. So it's disappointing, And look, what can you say? It's like if if you're a movie critic and it's like, look, I have to cover all the movies that come out, and there's one that's like you just don't like because it's like like Siskel and Ebert when they talk about like Space Jam or what the fuck ever. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'm so much more mature than this or anything like that. I'm just trying to say like, if you have such a disconnect from it because you're not part of the target audience. Like, of course you're not going to like it. And so this is a series that, like, it didn't, like, piss me off. It disappoints me when there's a series that I don't like, even on this level, when it happens in Shonen Jump, because it's like, well, this could have been, like, another series that I might have enjoyed. And on that level, I'm disappointed. But like, there's nothing offensive in this that really pisses me off. It doesn't do any, like, big tropes that really piss me off outside of the fact that I feel, again, like, the whole... like the Demon Lord does something wacky thing. I feel like that's a trope that I am tired of already at this point. But I'm not mad about it. It's like, all right, I just don't like it. And so, I'm not going to check it out anymore. That's all. And that is it, because that is the most recent series. We've reached the end of all the stuff I wanted to talk about today. So that's going to do it. This has been WMR Square. This has been the weekly manga recap month in review for November 2025. We will be back with another weekly episode soon. So be sure to check out twitch.tv/RoloT for the regular episode. Be sure to continue to watch stuff if you're watching the recording of this on YouTube. Hey, check out all the other regular videos where I have someone to talk to, and it tends to, in my opinion, be a lot more enjoyable to listen to. Subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff. And to everyone who showed up for this, thank you guys. I'll check you out next time.